Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. In today's video, I am going to be discussing the possibility that the Washington Wizards could trade Bradley Beal. However, before I get too far into it, I want to remind you all to leave a like and subscribe. I've been appreciating all the support that I've been receiving lately, and I hope to see that continue. Now, without further ado, let's talk about all things having to do with the Bradley Beal situation in Washington. So to start it off, let's talk about Bradley Beal, the player, a little bit. He's outstanding offensively, where he is remarkably versatile, is able to score at all three levels, as he's, for the most part, a jump shot oriented player who's able to knock down all kinds of shots, both off of the dribble and off of catch and shoots, which allows him to be a very reliable player, both on the ball and off the ball within the flow of the offense. And he also attacks the rim at a high level as well, and really can just score the ball whenever you need a bucket. And that's super valuable. Last season, we saw him break out and establish himself as a top 20-ish player in the NBA due to his scoring ability, as he averaged 31 points, 4 rebounds, and 6 assists last season on 45, 35, 84 shooting splits. And this season, he's just been even better than that, scoring 35 points, 5 rebounds, and 5 assists on 49 from the field, 38 from 3, 87 from the free throw line shooting splits. Now that is superstar level production from a player who is under team control over the next 2 seasons. So that brings the question, why would the Wizards want to trade him, and should they trade him? Now, I was in the area of that they should not trade Bradley Beal. That was my opinion for a long time. But upon some recent discoveries within the course of NBA action over the past few weeks, I'm starting to rethink my position on this issue. So the first thing to talk about here is the way that Bradley Beal meshes with his new teammate, Russell Westbrook. The two have not exactly established a great flow so far this season, as Westbrook has just been the same old Westbrook that he always has. He's not refrained from taking jump shots off the dribble, and actually, from what I've seen of the Wizards so far, has actually increased his volume of pull-up jumpers, which is not a shot that he is particularly good at, and limits how much Bradley Beal can have the ball in his hands. He's also a minus defender at this point in his career. He still plays super hard, but that leads to him gambling too much and not being able to recover. This is Westbrook we're talking about. And he's not such a good fundamental defensive player that even when he doesn't gamble, he's a plus defender. So the combination of those things make him a minus on that end. And although Brad is perfectly capable of being a fine defender when he's asked to carry the scoring load that he has been asked to on the offensive end of the floor, it's hard for him to really give the effort that is necessary for him to be good on the defensive side. So that pairing just has not worked out so far. It's still early and it could improve, but the early returns are not super promising. We also saw Thomas Bryant go down for the rest of the season with an ACL tear. Bryant is super valuable to what this Wizards team wanted to do on the offensive side of the floor as a big man who could space the floor and knock down threes while also being able to run to the rim on pick and roll opportunities and finish lobs there. So that is a big loss for them. Robin Lopez is a big step down on the offensive end of the floor. And while he will improve the defense, he's just not going to help this team win at the same level that Thomas Bryant did. The defensive stuff is a real problem, and that's the main reason why you have to really question whether or not this team can even make the playoffs. They're 3-8 at this point, which is just a game and a half outside the 10 seed, which is where they would obviously have to get in order to reach the play-in tournament. But can they reach the 8 seed, which would really make you feel comfortable? They would only have to win 1 out of 2 games instead of having to win back-to-back games in order to make the playoffs. And they're 2.5 games back of that right now. Obviously, it's a long season, and you can't overreact to these early starts, but They haven't looked particularly good, and considering Bryant's injury, that certainly doesn't bode well for them either. They also have been battling with a team bout with coronavirus, which in the past we've seen teams struggle following that, especially in the bubble where players like Russell Westbrook were really, really limited following their exposure to the virus. So I'm starting to really question whether or not this is truly a playoff team. I was really high on them going into the season, and I thought they could compete for like the 6th or the 7th seed. But so far, they have not been very good. And with other teams in the Eastern Conference, like the Hornets and the Magic, performing better than expected, they could be in quite a bit of trouble when it comes to making a playoff run. So, with that, in combination with the events of Wednesday's trade, in which we saw the Houston Rockets offload James Harden in exchange for 3 first-round picks from the Nets, 1 first-round pick from the Cavs, which was relayed from the Bucks, and 4 pick swaps from the Nets, in addition to Victor Oladipo, who's a bona fide borderline all-star caliber player in the NBA. That's an outstanding return, and I think that Bradley Beal is a step down from James Harden, but he's younger, and he doesn't have the same off-the-court questions as James does. So you could see the Wizards bringing back a very comparable, although probably slightly worse, return if they were to trade Beal. And so the combination of those factors, the outstanding return they could in all likelihood receive, along with just the fact that they haven't been as good as expected, combine in my mind to make the Bradley Beal situation a spot where they should be looking to trade him, in my opinion, at this point. So that brings along the question, what type of teams would be interested? Now, the short answer to that is every single team in the league. Beal is a 27-year-old player who can score at a high level, is going to raise the floor of every single team because of what he can do on the offensive end of the floor. So whether you're a bad team looking to become a fringe playoff team looking to become a strong playoff team, or a strong playoff team looking to become a championship contender, you could use a player like Bradley Beal. But obviously not every team is going to make a run at him. So I think that if we peel back a few factors that could really make a team desperate to trade for Brad, we can unveil about 5 teams that I think would be strong contenders in the Bradley Beal trade market. A few of these factors would be the team would have to be a strong playoff team. Now, like I said before, I think that any type of team could try to get in on the Beal sweepstakes. A team like Orlando or San Antonio that was trying to get into the playoffs could view Beal as very valuable as trying to help them win with their young cores. But I also think that a team that is currently a playoff team and is going to be quite a bit more desperate to get the most out of those playoff years are going to be more willing to give up future assets than a team that is still in the rebuilding phase and still trying to make their initial playoff run with their young core. So that leads me to believe that a team that is already a strong playoff squad is going to be willing to give up more future assets than a team that is not yet a strong playoff team. So I think that that is one piece of criteria that we can apply here. Another is that the team probably has to have all of their future draft capital. Bradley Beal is a great player. He's a top 20 player. And as we've seen over the past couple of years, players that are that good are going to bring back a ton of value in draft capital. Just look at Drew Holiday, who's an expiring contract and is probably a little bit worse than Bradley Beal. The Bucks gave up 3 first-round picks, 2 pick swaps, and 2 rotation players in exchange for Holiday. So in order to get Bradley Beal, you're probably going to have to be a team that has all of their picks moving forward so that you can give up that draft capital to really intrigue the Wizards. It also probably has to be a team with some expendable large contracts. If you are a team like the Bucks, yeah, you probably get a little bit better if you trade Drew Holiday for Bradley Beal, but is it worth giving up extra assets? No, probably not. If you're a team like the Raptors, Do you get better if you trade Kyle Lowry or Pascal Siakam for Bradley Beal? Yeah, you probably get a little bit better, but those guys are really good players as well, and you probably would have to attach value to make that trade happen. So I just don't think that that would be worth it for teams like that. So there's a few teams that can be eliminated there. With the draft capital stuff, I also think that you can get rid of some teams such as the Mavericks or the Lakers or the Bucks that we've seen give up all kinds of draft capital over the last couple of seasons. Excuse me, I almost sneezed there, but I was able to hold it in. Another piece of criteria here is the teams probably would have to have some intriguing young players. The Wizards are going to want to get back some guys that they've already seen the on-court product at the NBA level, and if you're a team that doesn't have any young pieces that you're willing to part with, well, quite frankly, you're probably not going to be able to get in on the Bradley Beal sweepstakes. So with those parameters outlined, what teams really fit these standards and could be considered strong candidates to make a Bradley Beal trade happen? I came up with 5 teams here. The Denver Nuggets, the Miami Heat, the Golden State Warriors, the Philadelphia 76ers, and the Boston Celtics. All 5 are playoff teams. All 5 have a good amount of draft capital moving forward. All 5 are teams that have some large contracts that they could part with, and all 5 have some good young players. So with those teams in mind, what are some trade packages that we could see in a Bradley Beal type trade? We'll start with the Nuggets, because when I started thinking about a Beal trade, they were the team that came to mind as the most likely. A package for Beal from the Nuggets would probably consist of Gary Harris, Will Barton, Michael Porter Jr., and some first-round picks. If I were the Nuggets, I would be quite hesitant to pull the trigger on this, especially if the Wizards would be asking for multiple first-round picks. Why, you might ask? Well, simply because it would be depleting their wing rotation. If you get rid of Harris and you get rid of Porter Jr., you're getting rid of the 2 players that start on the wings for this Nuggets team. And if you're getting rid of Will Barton on top of that, who's their 6th man off the bench who plays the wing position for, 25 plus minutes a night, you're really running out of wing guys there, and you're probably going to end up starting someone like PJ Dozier in at the 3 as a consequence of this trade. So that's certainly not good. And Porter Jr. also has significant upside that could make the Nuggets really, really question this. But if they were to make it happen, they would immediately have one of the best combinations of the top 3 players on their team in the entire league. Between Nikola Jokic, Brad Beal, and Jamal Murray, there is so much shot-making talent and so much playmaking talent that they would have a top 3 offense in the league and would be very difficult to stop, especially in a playoff setting where all 3 of those guys are capable of creating shots for themselves and hitting difficult shots. So this is a trade that I would consider, but not one that I would be super likely to pull the trigger on if I were the Nuggets. For the next team, I think that it's much more of a no-brainer. The Miami Heat package would be something like Andre Iguodala, Kelly Olynyk, Tyler Hero, and Precious Achiuwa, along with probably a few first-round picks. Probably like 2 or 3 at this point. The selling point of this trade for the Wizards would be that they are bringing on 2 young players that are intriguing and could be pieces for this team moving forward in Hero and Achiuwa. They're bringing in 2 expiring contracts that would help free up some salary cap space, although I think that the Wizards are pretty far over the cap at this point. So even just bringing on 2 players that can relieve them a little bit as they are expiring contracts and would be players who would just give them a little more room away from the luxury tax heading into upcoming seasons, as they still do have the massive Russell Westbrook contract on their books moving forward, would be another interesting selling point, and you're bringing in some draft capital that can help you have some assets for the future. This is a deal that makes a lot of sense for the Wizards. And for the Heat, I think it makes a lot of sense too. If this is the package that would go through, you're able to retain Duncan Robinson. You still, of course, have Jimmy Butler, Bam Adebayo, and Goran Dragic, your three best players from last year's NBA Finals run. And when you add Bradley Beal to that, there is a very, very high-level offensive team in there, and a team that also could be very, very competitive defensively. Between Adebayo and Butler, who are all NBA level guys, and Beal, who is capable of being good defensively when he's giving a lot of effort, yeah, that is a very strong defensive core. They would probably be around a top 10 team on that end. And on offense, I think they'd probably be a top 5 team just because of Butler's ability to attack the rim and get to the line, Adebayo's ability as a secondary playmaker and passer, but Beal's ability as a knockdown shooter and scorer, and Dragic's ability to run the offense. Like, that would be a very scary team on the offensive end of the floor. Oh, and you still have Duncan Robinson, who can shoot the lights out. So this is probably the one that makes the most sense to me, and the Heat would be the team I would have my eyes on the most if Bradley Beal were to become available. The next team here is the Warriors. My package for them that I came up with would be Andrew Wiggins, James Wiseman, and first-round picks. The Minnesota first-round pick, top 3 protected for this upcoming season, would likely be the most important piece of this trade, as that has a chance to be like a top 5 or 6 pick. And this is a strong draft where in that area you could be adding someone like Jalen Green or Jonathan Kuminga. And that would be very intriguing to the Wizards and very enticing as a chance to grab another early lottery pick in this stacked draft. They also would be bringing in James Wiseman, who has shown flashes of being a intriguing young player so far in his rookie season, and Andrew Wiggins, who would be on his 3rd team in 2 seasons, but would still probably provide some intrigue with his skills as a basketball player after being the first-round pick just a few seasons ago. So that's another package that would make a lot of sense for the Wizards, but my questions come more on the Warriors side of things. Like, why would you do this? Does it make you that much better to add Bradley? I mean, obviously it does make them a lot better to have Bradley Beal. You have a lineup of Steph Curry, Brad Beal, Kelly Oubre, Draymond Green, and Kevon Looney, assuming Wiseman is moved on from in the trade. But that is a very good starting lineup and a team that would compete for home court advantage in the playoffs. Also, once Klay Thompson came back, they'd be devastating offensively. So clearly there's a good reason for the Warriors to do this trade. I just think that, well, I was going to say the luxury tax implications, but if you're adding Beal and getting rid of Wiggins, they have pretty similar contracts. So now I'm talking myself into this, and this makes a lot of sense for the Warriors. So right now, the Warriors and the Heat are the two teams that I really think would be the strongest competitors in the Beal deal. Let's talk about the Sixers. There are 2 different packages I came up with for Philadelphia. The first is a Tobias Harris-centered package, where it's Tobias Harris, Matisse Thybulle, Tyrese Maxey, and a couple first-round picks in exchange for Brad Beal. Harris is mostly there as salary filler, and I think that because his salary probably has some negative value right now, they would have to give up quite a bit of future assets in order to get this deal done. That improves promising young players like Maxey and Thybulle, as well as first-round picks. Probably something like 3 firsts and 3 swaps because of the negative value that Tobias Harris contract has. So they'd have to give up quite a bit in order to get that particular deal done. But the other alternative is Ben Simmons for Bradley Beal straight up. I don't know if they have equal trade value, and maybe one team would ask for another asset in addition. I don't know which player would be valued more highly, I think I would probably rather have, well, I think I'd rather have Beal as a secondary option and Simmons as a primary option. So I really don't know which team would be attaching extra value there. But for the Sixers, oh boy, just imagine adding Bradley Beal to an offense with Joel Embiid. The pick and roll stuff there would be devastating. Beal's ability to space the floor for Embiid would just be incredible. And that would be a super high level offensive team. And if you're able to do it while trading Tobias Harris instead of trading Ben Simmons, then a trio of Beal, Embiid, and Simmons are 3 top 20-ish players in the league. That is a really stacked team, and if the 76ers could make it happen, I absolutely think that that would be a trade they should pull the trigger on. The Simmons for Beal one, I would be a bit more hesitant, especially because Simmons does have longer contract value, so maybe the Wizards would have to throw in an extra asset to get the Beal for Simmons trade done. But, I mean, the team with Simmons, Embiid, and Beal would just be absolutely terrifying, and the 76ers would truthfully be a strong competitor in the Bradley Beal sweepstakes if he were to become available. The last team here is the Boston Celtics, and I kind of just threw them on here as a potential team, but not necessarily a strong case. I just don't think that their package is all that enticing when you're comparing it to the other teams. The big contract here is probably Kemba Walker, who, in my opinion, is most likely a negative value contract at this point. He's on a max contract for the next 3 seasons, I believe, and he's not playing at a max contract level at this point, as he's been injury prone when he is out there. He's been great, but just because he hasn't been able to get on the court as much as you'd like to see would take away some of the value of that contract. So I think that the Celtics would have to attach multiple first-round picks in order to get that done. Probably like 3 firsts and 2 or 3 swaps once again. That's a hefty price to pay, and I don't know if the Celtics would want to do it. So I question whether or not this would be a team that would get involved, but if they were to pull the trigger, then a lineup of Marcus Smart, Bradley Beal, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Daniel Tice would be probably the best starting 5 top to bottom in the league, and definitely would make the Celtics even more of a threat to win this year's NBA title than they are as currently constructed. Overall here, I think that the best package for the Wizards would probably be the 76ers package. I don't know. It comes down to the Heat, the Warriors, and the Sixers in my mind. And from there, it's really tough to call. Actually, no, the best package is probably the Nuggets, but I'm just not sure the Nuggets would be willing to give that up. So once you get rid of them and you get rid of the Sixers or the Celtics, whose package just isn't that good, you come down to those 3 teams. And from there, it would probably just come down to which teams are willing to give up the most future draft capital in order to see who gets the trade done for Bradley Beal. Now, all of this is completely hypothetical. We have not gotten any news that a Bradley Beal trade is possible. From everything we've heard, Tommy Shepard is still not taking calls on Brad. But with Harden getting traded, he's the next star on the market, theoretically. And if he does get traded, the Wizards would be able to bring back a monumental package in return. So let me know what your thoughts are on the Bradley Beal situation. If you were the Wizards, would you trade him? If you were one of the other teams, what would your package be? Let me know. Leave a like and subscribe if you did enjoy this video. That's going to be it for me, ladies and gentlemen. I will see you all again very soon.